Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well today. And now today we are going to discuss yet another very interesting topic, which is emotional intelligence in email writing. Now, the context in this video is taken from the research paper named Writing Resonant Emails by Andrew Brodsky, who is an assistant professor of management at the University of Texas at Austin McComb's School of Business. So, let's get started. Now, let's talk about the challenge first. Now, imagine sending a detailed question to your boss and getting a one-word response in that email, no. Is she angry, offended by your email, or just very busy? This is the dilemma over the response received. Now, when Andrew Brodsky, the author of the research paper, when he conducted research with organizations on the topic of communication, one of the most common themes raised by both employees and managers is the challenge of trying to communicate emotional or sensitive issues over email. Email, of course, lacks most normal cues for relaying emotions such as tone of voice and facial expressions. But in many cases, using email is simply unavoidable. So how can you balance the need to communicate with avoiding the potential pitfalls of using emotion in email? Here are 3 research-based recommendations. Now, the very first recommendation is understand what drives how emails are interpreted. Now, it is clear that people often misinterpret emotion in email. What drives the direction of that misinterpretation is a big question. Now, for one, people infuse their emotional expectations into how they read messages, regardless of the sender's actual intent. Now, let's consider this one email through example. Good job on the current draft, but I think we can continue to improve it. Now, coming this from a peer, this email will seem very collaborative, but coming from a supervisor, it may seem critical. In addition to relative position, email from people high in power tend to be perceived as more negative. Now, there are other contextual factors to consider, like the length of a relationship. For instance, emails from people we know well tend to be perceived as less negative. Now, the emotional history of the relationship and the individual's personality plays a crucial role. For instance, negative people tend to perceive messages as more negative. Now, the first step in avoiding miscommunication is to try to stand in recipients' shoes. Try to think from their perspective. How will they perceive it to be? And imagine how they are likely to interpret your message. Doing so can help you to prevent misunderstandings before they even ever occur. Another recommendation while writing emails using emotional intelligence is mimicking behaviors. Now, what is the best way to convey emotions via email? Emoticons, word choice, exclamation points? There is no single correct answer to it. The proper cues will vary based on the context. For instance, you likely wouldn't want to send a smiley face emoticon to a client organization that is known for having a very formal culture. Alternatively, you wouldn't want to send an overly formal email to a very close colleague. Now, one strategy that has been found to be very effective across settings is to engage in behavioral mimicry. Using emoticons, word choice, and slang jargons in a similar manner to the person with whom you are communicating is very important. For instance, I live in India, and if I am trying to build a rapport with a client based in United Kingdom, and if I'm into an export business, and if I'm writing emails to them, Generally in United Kingdom, instead of saying goodbye or thank you, they use the salutation as cheers mate in their emails or verbally as well. So what I can do is, while I write emails, I can mimic their slang, I can mimic their way of writing emails. I can also write, instead of saying goodbye or thank you, I can write cheers mate or cheers. I'll see you next week, something like that. Now, in a set of studies of American, Dutch, and Thai negotiators using behavioral mimicry in the early stages of text-based chat negotiations, increased individual outcomes by 30%. Now, this process of mimicry increases trust because people tend to feel an affinity toward those who act similarly to them. Now, the third recommendation while writing resonant emails using emotional intelligence is stating your emotions. Well, while mimicking behaviors can be effective, it is still a rather subtle strategy that leaves the potential for emotional ambiguity. The simplest solution to avoid any confusion is to just explicitly state the emotion that you want to relay in your email. One example of how this works comes from a media organization that Andrew Brodsky had worked with. He asked the employees for an email that they felt was written very poorly, and one employee provided him with this message or email from the manager. Now let's see the email. The intro of the commercial needs to be redone. I'm sure that's the client's doing and you will handle it well. Warm regards, XYZ, which is the manager's name. Now, to an outsider, this email seemed well crafted to avoid offending the employee. However, the employee felt differently and explained, "She, the manager, knows perfectly that I made the terrible intro." And she was saying, "Well, I am sure the client made that segment and that you will tackle it." And then she put a little smiley face at the end. So overall, a condescendingly nasty tone. If the manager had avoided subtlety and stated her meaning directly, there might have been less room for interpretation. Now, for example, what if she had written, "I am very happy with your work so far. I think the intro could be improved though. Would you mind giving it another shot?" The employee would have had felt far less ambiguity to fill in with her own emotional expectations. Yet, people rarely state their intended emotions even when stakes are very high. A research from NYU has shown that many people are overconfident in their ability to accurately relay emotions when it comes to email. It may seem obvious to the message sender that a co-worker who never takes sick days will realize a comment about them leaving early is humorous rather than serious. However, that co-worker might be particularly concerned about being seen as lazy and will feel hurt or offended. Well, now, given the constantly evolving nature of organizational communication, there is still a lot to learn about effective email use. However, there are some clear areas where we can improve. In reality, we all have the same flaw. We tend to be overly focused on ourselves and our own goals while failing to account for other people's perspectives. Using these methods for bridging your and your email perspectives by both increasing message clarity and building trust will help you to ensure effective communication. And that's it for today's video. I hope you got some insights out of it and it will help you to write better emails, especially in your professional life. So stay tuned for many more interesting articles, stories, case studies, and my thoughts related to management. I'll see you next week.